Today I'm talking about a second short story I've just read in Italian. It's this one, La Vecchia Casa, which is a translation of an old Hans Christian Andersen story. But I'm not going to discuss the story so much. I thought, what about if I tried actually translating a bit of it to see how close I could get to the English? No, not the original exactly, because that wasn't in English. But there are some fairly old English versions on Gutenberg. So that's what I did. When translating this, I had no idea whether or not this was a completely true to the original translation, or an updated version. After I've done the translation, I'll put up the Project Gutenberg version, and we'll compare. C'era una volta, all'angolo di una strada, una casa vecchia vecchia. So, c'era una volta is the equivalent of once upon a time. You'll see or hear it with many fairy tales. So, once upon a time, on the corner of a street was an old house. Aveva quasi 300 anni. It was almost 300 years old. E il conto era presto fatto dal resto, perché la data stava scolpita sotto al terrazzino, incorniciata da un ornato di tulipani e di viticci. It took me quite a while to work out the first bit of the sentence because it didn't seem to make sense to me, but I think it's along the lines of, and that was soon proved from what remained, because the date was carved beneath the small terrace, framed by ornate tulips and tendrils. Si potevan leggere ancora molte scritte in caratteri antichi, con interi versi. You could read still more written in old-fashioned letters, whole verses. Sopra ogni finestra, sul architrave, era scolpito un mascherone, e tutti d'accordo di questi mascheroni facevan certi versacci. Above every window on the architrave was a carved gargoyle. Now, tutti d'accordo is literally everyone agrees, but I think maybe this means that, the same as everything else, these gargoyles had tendrils, or made up part of the tendrils. I could be completely wrong. Il piano superiore sporgeva assai più innanzi del pianterreno, e sotto al tetto c'era una grondaia di piombo con un drago. The upper floor extended far out beyond the ground floor, and under the roof there was a lead gutter with a dragon. Ma l'acqua piovana, che avrebbe dovuto uscire dalla bocca, usciva invece dal ventre del drago, perché nella doccia c'era un buco. But the rainwater, which should have spouted out from the mouth, instead exited from the dragon's stomach, because there was a hole in the pipe. I'm assuming here that doccia would be something like pipe, because to say there was a hole in the shower doesn't really work in English, and I wouldn't exactly call this a fountain, more of a spout. Again, hopefully we'll see that right now, because I'm opening up this Project Gutenberg copy of a Hans Andersen collection, first published in 1886, which has this story in it. No, I'm not doing this live, but after I've translated the paragraph. So the first difference here is that it doesn't begin with once upon a time. So that could have been added, or existed in another translation. In fact, there's nothing about being nearly 300 years old at all. Oh, the 300 years old is further down. There seems to be little point in going through this line by line. It's so different. Apparently, the verses were all over the windows. That's not in the Italian version. And the gargoyles were grinning. Neither is that. And it was only a dragon's head. But the rain still came out of its body? Just a note here, I did go and look to see if there was another version that was less, what shall I call it? Pedestrian? Not poetic in the least? But the only other one was the same text. So either this Italian version was translated directly from the original, or from an updated version, or they just made an updated version with a little more flair added. But comparing them is probably a lost cause. That's a shame. Anyway, it was a good exercise. So this is another very short story that you might want to tackle reading in Italian. The vocabulary is a little more difficult, but you can get the gist of it without looking too much up.